Okay, now let's start presenting. Woohoo! We did it. That was the strangest technical difficulty. So sorry about that. But welcome to our industry update. I'm so excited to power up with you guys today. It's January, and I love doing these industry updates every month because this exact reason. I feel like as the economy is always changing and the real estate world is constantly evolving, it's so important for us as realtors to give ourselves perspective, to empower ourselves. Hi, Alexis, glad you're here. To empower ourselves, because we all know, what do our clients see? They just see what's on social media or on the news, most of which is not actually accurate. And so it's our duty to inform ourselves and get clarified perspective and help our clients with the same thing so that we can help lead ourselves and lead them with strategy. And so the goal is that this gives you hope every month and perspective and fresh strategy. And always remember this statement: the economy does not dictate your success. It dictates your strategy and how you communicate. So it's always the focus that when you need to pivot. And that's why we want to always be aware of what's happening, because what worked for us 6 months ago in this industry is probably not what's going to work for us now, right? It's constantly evolving. So these are the numbers that I always review before we start going into the industry update, because I want you to feel empowered that as an agent, at any time, you could go on Google and look these numbers up and be able to decipher and translate like what's happening in the economy to help you and help your clients. So of course, I love having you on here with me, but also know that you can empower yourself this way, because this is your magic formula: 2246. These are your magic numbers for an ideal economy, basically. You want to know them and memorize them. 2246. And the goal means we always want our GDP to be around 2% nationally, inflation to be around 2%, real estate appreciation to be around 4%, and unemployment to be around 6%. When the economy is basically within these numbers, that's when everything is smooth and good and things are just clicking right along. And when those numbers get out of whack, that's when we start to have a problem. And so that's what we're always looking at first is, okay, where is GDP, inflation, real estate price appreciation, and unemployment? And everything kind of flows from there. So we're going to start out looking at GDP, which of course, these slides will be fully updated at the family reunion in February. I know we're going to have awesome new research numbers, some summarizing the entire year of 2023 with KW. So I'm very excited about that. But this just gives you a basic, and honestly, there's not a lot that has changed dramatically. So this is still very applicable to what our GDP looks like right now, coming off of the fourth quarter of 2023. For anybody that's new to this, basically what we're looking at when we look at GDP is we're looking to see if the economy is growing or contracting. GDP, if you don't feel versed in economic stuff, it's just the measurement of goods and services consumed by a country minus the difference between imports and exports. So gross domestic profit, right? And we want this to grow on an annual basis. It's a good thing for GDP to grow. That's how we know businesses are improving, houses are worth, more. We're able to pay employees better incomes. It all growing GDP helps us grow up with natural inflation that's going to happen, right? And so that's why it's super important. So right now, where GDP is coming off of the fourth quarter of 2023, overall was 2.4%. So it actually didn't change much from what we saw in 2020 Q3 of 2023. So 2.4% is where we finished the year. Definitely better than 2022, because in 2022 we finished a lot lower, as you can see, about 1.9%. You can see that right here, and then again right here. So anyways, 1.9% when we entered into 2023. That's right here where we're looking. And so we have growth. That's positive. Remember, 2246. So 2.4 is pretty close to in line where we want our GDP to be. Now, from the Fed and from economic analysts, they do expect a slowdown in the first half of 2024. However, no recession. So that's good to know. They believe that GDP growth is still going to be moderate, probably around 1.7%. So it's going to kind of equal out or continue moving, but slow, if that makes sense. And there's a few things that are going to contribute to that predictably this year. One is that both consumer and business spending is expected to slow this year, but not so much as like enough to cause a recession, but just people are a little bit more cautious. I personally think that probably is partially due to that it's an election year and the psychology of that. Historically in our country, it's interesting because psychologically, people tend in an election year, people tend to become more cautious generally, because it's like the psychology of not knowing what to expect, right? And then typically after an election, no matter whether your person that you wanted to win wins or not, like whoever takes office, you see a huge uptick in spending and consumer confidence, because it's like people know what to expect. Like, all right, this is what we have for the next 4 years, move forward. So it's an interesting dynamic as we're going into 2024. And I also thought this was interesting that economists say part of the reason why we're going to have a slowdown, but not damaging enough to be a recession, is that personal income has been growing. Personal income grew at 4.1% this year after taxes and inflation. So that's been supporting consumer spending. And a lot of consumers are still like, they have good balance sheets. Their debt is locked in at low interest rates, i.e., mortgages and all that sort of stuff. It is notable, though. I think part of why we're going to see some of that slowdown is because what they're seeing is that non-wealthy households have largely depleted their extra savings buffers that they had basically accumulated during the pandemic, right? If you remember, a couple months back, we talked about that dynamic of how the pandemic infused all of this, like, billions of dollars of cash into our economy. And so it really accelerated spending just because people had random extra money, right? And that has changed. So people are going to need to boost their savings that probably has been depleted. And they do expect to see more defaults on credit cards and cars, car loans, and that sort of stuff. But interestingly enough, they also said it's not anything different than what would normally have been a normal level before the pandemic. So I don't know. It's interesting. It's like we're normalizing to what things used to be like, sort of. But they are also saying businesses are likely to conserve cash and limit their spending because of all of these dynamics that are happening in 2024 moving forward. So just good to know we're in a healthy place, and it's going to continue. We're going to see a little bit of a contraction of spending, but it shouldn't be danger zone, right? Inflation, remember 2.246 inflation. Our goal is for inflation to be around 2%. That's a healthy, consistent inflation rate. In December, inflation was at 3.4%. So it's a slight uptick from the previous quarters. However, they do say that they expect that rate to come down quickly in the next few months. So that's good news. I think we're on the, we're light at the end of the tunnel. We're coming out of the inflation crisis at the moment. And when you're looking at inflation and GDP, a lot of times we're looking at where do we feel inflation the most, right? We feel inflation in our groceries, in food, energy, those sorts of things. So that's actually, interestingly enough, that part of inflation is expected to kind of stay flat or decline, meaning prices will get better, which is great. The interesting bigger problem that they brought up was that inflation in service prices is still uncomfortably high. So meaning like if you're hiring somebody to do a job for you, that sort of thing. And then of course, that's like a trickle down effect of it affects other prices. But they do believe there is going to be some improvement with inflation expected this year in the world of housing because of slower rent growth, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But the rental world, interestingly enough, if you guys know, look all around, we've seen apartment buildings going up everywhere. And the demand for that has softened for multiple reasons. So interesting and exciting to know that we should be moving towards that healthy 2% inflation rate in 2024. Praise the Lord, right? Anybody else want cheaper groceries and gas? Yes. So unemployment is the next thing that we always want to look at when we're predicting, what's the year going to look like and where are we at right now. And as you guys probably know, like unemployment generally has been like insanely low, like historically lower than it's ever really been, like ever. 4%, remember 2.246, 4% is the target for unemployment to basically say, hey, everybody that wants a job has a job, sort of a situation. And we are sitting below 3.6. So that's good. It basically what it means, and I apologize, I said 4%, 6%. 6% is the unemployment percentage that we go for. 4% is for price appreciation with homes. 6% is our goal for unemployment. So if we're at 3.6, we are well below the 6% standard for unemployment. And generally that basically, like I've talked about before, means that everybody that wants a job has a job. The other interesting dynamic with that is also like job selection, because there are jobs available, but there was actually a survey that was done last month, and they found that the majority of people who are like in the workforce or like looking for a job say that their minimum standard for employment is $100,000. And that's a huge change as far as like the majority saying that's how much they want to earn. And so some of the jobs that are out there, it's a selection thing, right? Where if the mentality is I need to make $100,000, that's the only type of job I'm going to take. But then the only jobs are, you know, minimum wage at a fast food restaurant. That's the dynamic where people are still having trouble hiring, but the people that don't have jobs don't want those jobs. And it's an interesting dynamic. So it is interesting too to say this doesn't really necessarily apply directly to Charlotte locally, but I do think it's an interesting thing to know nationally, because we did have a tick up with more people getting jobs, and that's because there was a jobs gain that happened in November. 30,000 auto workers returned to work after a big strike. And so that was a big impact that made job gains rise. It rose to 199,000 new jobs in November. So just fun fact, right? So let's keep it rolling and talk about price growth and home prices. So this is a S&P CoreLogic home price appreciation, as you can see, from November 22 to now. I'm sure if you have been in the real estate world, which you all are, none of us are necessarily surprised that home prices are continuing to grow, because that's just where we're at. Interesting thing to know about home price growth, it's actually up 4.8% year over year. So basically, this particular thing measures the price of existing homes. So not new builds, but existing homes across the nation. And it rose 4.8% year over year. It's up from a 4% annual gain. So home prices have actually gone up like 0.8% more this year than they have in the past. And prices have increased every month on a monthly basis nationally for 9 consecutive months. And obviously we all can probably agree and know that a large part of that is due to the lack of inventory. There's just not enough homes to go around, and that has continued to push prices higher, even though mortgage rates have hit a 23-year high during that same month in October. So what I will just say, and this is not in the study information that I research as we're preparing for today, but you know, it reminds me of, think about golfing. Okay. I saw this analogy and I was like, that is so true. That's where we're at right now, and how I feel like we should be talking to our buyers and potential buyers and helping them, because right now really could almost be like this window of time where somebody can purchase, and it's like that sweet window of time, like when somebody bought right before COVID. Right? Because here's what's going to happen. Right now, someone's negotiating to buy a home, right? Prices are higher than we want. Interest rates are higher than we want. So there's lower buyers, lower demand, right? The lower buyers out there actually bidding, and there's more negotiation options. So imagine like you're putting, right? Right now, for your clients, it's like there's one ball and it's going to the hole, right? You're putting in the green. As we get down, let's say a month from now, and interest rates tick lower, it's going to be like 5 balls are going for that same hole on the putting green, right? Like 5 buyers are competing with you to get that same home. When we get into the spring and interest rates really dip, we are going to see 40 balls going for that same hole on the putting green. And that's really the interesting dynamic right now, right? Is like, because inventory is so low, there has been so many people waiting on the sidelines that as soon as those interest rates drop, we're going to see an unleashing of demand, in my opinion. So I think that's important for us to be aware of and just pay attention to. Interesting thing to know as well, new construction home sales are back to pre-COVID time. They're up 5%. They rose for the 3rd consecutive month. And the interesting thing about this is that we still don't have enough demand, and like, you know, even if builders were building nonstop, it wouldn't catch up for like years, right? But it's very encouraging to see that those new construction home starts are happening. Total housing starts nationally rose 14.8% to 1.56 million in November. And then the interesting thing is the difference between single family and multifamily. So they said that single family home starts was at about 18%, which is huge for new construction. And multifamily home starts rose 6.9%. So this takes us to the interesting, like, sort of difference, is that, first of all, because there's been that slow and steady, like modest gain in single family permits and new builds in that way, it is potential that builders are going to, they're continue to ramp up construction, but it's not going to be gangbusters. They're going to just do this cautiously. But multifamily developers, it looks like they're starting to hit the brakes a little bit. So, and there's a few dynamics. There's more restrictive credit conditions that have gone into effect. And also what I mentioned earlier about apartments, there's softer demand for apartments. So it's interesting because this last year, a lot of what we saw was, oh my gosh, multifamily housing is going up everywhere. Like, we need more single family homes. And so we're going to start to see a shift back to single family and less of a focus on multifamily, which is good news for us. Of course, you guys know there's been all sorts of impact from high interest rates. We know this. Home sales are down. This is from National Association of Realtors. It's dramatically affected the commercial industry hugely. And so this is why it's so important that these continue to adjust. This is what I'm talking about apartment construction. So this is the annual apartment construction at it was at a 40-year high for 2 years. And this came out in October. So as of January 1st, what they're finding now is that apartment vacancy rates have turned higher, and demand is normalizing. So the trend of thinking like, oh, no one's going to buy a house anymore, everyone's going to live in apartments, is not the case. It's still the American dream. It's still what people want. Even if they are renting apartments temporarily to try to get into their home, it's a temporary fix. And that's going to we're going to see that impact positively in our market with new home sales, but also with, just residential sales in general. So even though new home sales fell to their lowest level this past year, it's exciting to see that we're back. We're coming back, and we're coming back with fire. So look for newly built homes definitely to stay robust in 2024, as regular, residential real estate resale is going to continue as well. So that's exciting, right? The other thing that I just wanted to point out, now I had this on our slides last month too, but I just think it's very interesting when you're looking at home prices. And again, if you have not done this, like, I'll send the slides out. So print this off or take a screenshot and laminate these and, like, take them to your appointments and use them as tools, because it's really interesting. Again, going back to why should somebody buy right now? And you look at, this is the home price change for Q2 in 2023. 8.5% up in South Carolina, 7.5% up in North Carolina of price increases, right? This is the craziest one. Home price change from onset of COVID 2020 Q1 to 2023 Q2. And this is continuing, right? Prices are not going back down. It's going to continue a steady increase. So look at that. 55.9% increase from 2020 to 2023. 51.5% increase in South Carolina. That's the conversation to be having with people right now that are thinking about, like, well, should I buy now or wait for 6 months? And it's really the idea of, like, first of all, with home values, right? Home values are continuing to increase. Interest rates are going down. As interest rates go down, buyer demand goes up. So do you want to wait 5 months and pay a higher overall price for the home with more competition? Or do you want to, let's start looking now so you can get more equity in your home, get a better price now. Interest rates are what they are, and you can always refinance as you move forward. It's just really interesting. And the other thing, which we've talked about before, that I think is super important to think about with that, is that it also means that there is so much equity. I believe, I have it in my notes, I'll have to look, but I believe it's like $27 billion in equity or something like that. Like, it's insane the amount of equity that people have in their homes right now. I'll have to find that note. I wrote it in here somewhere. Hold on. Now it's going to drive me crazy. I want to find it. 27. I was like being modest. $27 trillion in equity. There's $27 trillion in equity. So the other thing that's so important to be thinking about right now is people have so much equity, and they, if they don't want to sell right now for whatever reason, How can you be the person that helps them understand how to take that equity and make their money work for them? This is a great time to be talking about to people that maybe have never thought about it of, hey, let's have a conversation about your first investment property. How can we make your equity work for you and create more passive income? So I just find that to be crazy and exciting. So I hope that helps you guys. Okay, so let's keep moving, which, by the way, I didn't mention this, but it's also great to know when you're looking back at home prices and everything. An increase in mortgage applications, of course, has begun because interest rates are starting to tick down. I know we had a great conversation with our lenders on Tuesday at the team meeting talking about this, that they're already seeing an increase in overall just applications and interest. So we're going to see demand just continue to increase as that continues to go down and continue in that direction. Okay, so let's talk about mortgage rates for a second. Now, this is obviously from October. Today, we're still sitting, I believe I looked last night and it was like 7.1% for a 30-year mortgage, I believe is what I looked up last night. So not terribly far, but we're moving in that direction, right? And of course, there are options right now that you can get in the sixes depending on what type of financing you're doing. So the big thing with interest rates that we talk about a lot, and it's really important to understand like how this all goes together if you've never like talked about this before, is because the interest rates is really what the Federal Reserve uses. It's their one lever that they can pull to speed up or slow down growth. The interesting dynamic this last year is they have like tried to pull that lever, pull the lever, pull the lever, and interest rates have gone way, way up, and it hasn't actually dramatically slowed down growth. And they're taking a new approach in 2024, and I think it's going to be really, really positive. So this is from the Fed, but basically, majority of bond investors with the Fed, the general prediction and expectation is what we should see is that they're going to start cutting interest rates like officially by March. That's when we're going to see the official like changes. And then they're going to, what they're saying and is the expectation is that they're going to then continue regular cuts at almost every Fed meeting after that for a total of 6 cuts in 2024. Now, that could be a little optimistic, right? That sounds lovely. And be it that it's an election year, it's also unpredictable. Regardless of, it's not a political statement, right? Like regardless of who's in office or who is being voted for, just the uncertainty of an election year. I thought this was really interesting. The Fed chair, Powell, he repeatedly also stated that he's reluctant to start rate cuts until he's absolutely certain, like double sure that inflation is going to hit its 2% target and stay there, because his thought is he doesn't want to have to backtrack and like lower rates and then bring them back up. So that's why they are trying to be slow and cautious about it versus just let's slash them and go. And with the presidential campaign, I think my personal opinion, what I think based on that research, what we'll probably see, because they're saying that with the presidential campaign, like even if they're doing all those cuts, the last cut would be in September, and then the election, and then after the election, following that would be when they would do like another cut, because there's that window of time. So what I think we're probably going to see this year is those consistent cuts. We are going to see that happening. Yay. It's wonderful news for us and for our clients. And I think we're going to see like a pop of business. Like if I were you, I would be planning my year thinking about January to September. Like, how do I get as much of my goal completed in the first 3 quarters of this year? Because it's an election year, which means the last quarter of the year, you'll still have business happening for sure. There's still going to be business going on, but the general trend is you're going to see more uncertainty in consumers. There's going to be more people that are going to like put a pause on things and wait till after the election, because there's just the psychology of that certainty of knowing, okay, this is who we've got, this is what we're moving forward with. And the closer that you get, when you get to September, October, you're going to see a lot more of that uncertainty happening. A lot more, like the Fed said, probably not doing any more rate cuts right then. People are going to slow down. And then I believe after the election happens, the rest of the year and then into 2025 is going to be, all bets off, gangbusters. So if I were you, I would really be thinking about, okay, take my goal and instead of tracking it out by 4 quarters, let me track it out by 3 quarters and do my darndest to get as close to that as I possibly can so that the fourth quarter is gravy and I'm still working, but I'm not panicking trying to make everything happen during a time where things could be very uncertain in general. You know what I mean? So good things to know also, price growth by key items. So this is from NAR. This is talking about year over year changes. So fun, 18% increase in car insurance. We've seen lodging go up, food, gas. I mean, basically everything has gone up except medical service and airfare, which y'all, this one always like, I'm like, really? I don't feel like airfare is cheaper. Do y'all? Down 13%, maybe because it was exorbitant last year. So now it's down, but still expensive. I don't know. Airfare to me still feels expensive, but that's a big thing to be paying attention to here is that rental price change from over a year ago to now, and then how that's going to be affected as demand is softening there and how that will correlate to our market. So we just talked about this, mortgage rates will fall. Yes. So I just told you the general prediction of what the Fed is basically saying that they're going to do. And then this is what this is the general prediction from NAR. So it's just kind of, I already said this, but this is what we were basically talking about. The other thing I wanted to touch on really quick, and then I think we're going to end a little bit early today because I just breezed through some of this. We covered a lot in a short amount of time. So pent-up sellers. This is one of the things that I think is super important to be thinking about right now of like, okay, who are my clients for 2024? If I am working to get, 80% of my business done or more in the first 3 quarters of this year, who do I need to target? Because this is the dynamic that we're starting to see unfold. If you guys are aware, I don't know if you've seen on our Facebook group, but like there's already I'm seeing agents posting like, hey, I was just in a multiple offer situation with 21 other offers competing and they went, 50,000 over. And like those things are coming back because we have this dynamic right now. As interest rates go down, absolutely, just general demand is going to explode. However, what we're seeing right now is there are a lot of pent-up sellers that just can't wait any longer. And this is why, because there's people that move because they feel like it or because they want to or feels like a good opportunity. There's a whole other segment of people that move because they have to, right? And in this market that we came out of, this is true, but also this is going to show up even more in 2024 because these people have been waiting, trying not to move, and now they have to because 7 million new babies have been born in 2 years. There's been 3 million marriages. There's been 1.5 million divorces. There's been 7 million people that turn 65, 4 million deaths, 4 million net new jobs, and 50 million job switches. So think about it in the way of like, it's the D's, right? Death, divorce, dilation, downsizing, et cetera. These are the reasons why people like, we actually have a client right now that reached out to my husband, Josh, and they have been in their home for a little over 2 years, and they're moving because they're pregnant. They're like, we have to sell. We don't have room. So it's a great example of like right now, that's what you're going to see. And so if I were you, I would be really thinking about how can I target, like, where's my niche here, right? Where's my niche? How can I target? There's agents that target specifically. I want to, be the divorce agent that can help people that are going through divorces. I went through that and I want to help other people. Or maybe you want to help home buyers or people that are 55, 65 plus that are downsizing. This would be a great strategy to pick a category of what you want to target. In addition, of course, you're communicating with your database and generally talking to your leads and all of that. But also, what's the messaging that you can create? Who is it that maybe you have somebody that, hey, you guys got married last year and bought a house 2 years ago. I know you've got equity. Maybe they're not ready to sell yet, but hey, let's start building your passive income stream. You could be doing home buyer seminars targeted to these things, right? Or home seller seminars targeted to these things, like millionaire real estate investor seminar, where you invite potential sellers to come and you're talking to them about how to use their equity to buy their second home or their next investment, or begin building their passive income. Just an idea, but like there's a lot of different strategies you could take to target different categories like this and really grow your business this year. So I love that idea. And I think it's generally just exciting to think about like, okay, it's generally promising. And how can I target to be very strategic? Because you don't want it to be just noise, right? Like there's going to be a lot going on this year with demand and with sellers and the election and everything else. Like, how can you stand out to people? How can you stand out among all the other realtors? And what can be the unique service that you offer? You know, our job basically is to go find those people. This just goes back to what we've already talked about, total home sales. They bottomed out really at the end of 2023. And like we already talked about, that's going to continue to grow in 2024. So that's great news for us. And I think that's my last slide. So to go back to this really quickly, I just want to say, like, I want you to think about when you're thinking about your strategy for 2024, our job is to find these people. And it's almost like we just need to be more intentional with our database, right? With your database and people in your world. It's not necessarily about just going to meet just anybody, right? Like, not like, what if this year you shifted from like, I'm just going to have random conversations and try to find people to I'm going to go to people that know, like, and trust me and find people that are having these specific big changes, because this will create movement in the industry and it will really help you stand out as things could become chaotic feeling potentially with supply and demand and everything else. So think about it like this. Let's say you have 200 people in your database and you're like, okay, this is a great idea, but like or did I say 2 million people? 200 people in your database. And maybe you're like, that's fine, but like, I don't think I have 200 people having babies or getting divorced or married or that are 65. I want you to think about like my 200 people, each of those 200 people know 200 people, probably on average, right? So imagine that 200 people, they all know 200 people. Your job and goal when you're working in your database is not just to connect with my people, my 200 people, and find out who wants to buy and sell right now, but like, who do they know? And it's going to help you get way stronger results when you're not just saying to them, hey, by the way, do you know anybody that wants to buy or sell? What if you said to them something more specific of like, hey, by the way, I specialize in helping people over 65 find their forever home, or I specialize in helping new parents find the perfect home for their kids to grow up in. Who do you know that just had a baby? I'd love to be a support to them. Hey, I specialize in helping people build passive income through the equity in their home. Who do you know that's owned their home more than 2 years? Right? Very simple questions you can be asking that can help your people in your life know who to connect you with. Because if you just say, hey, do you know anyone willing to buy or sell? They're probably going to be like, I don't know, right? But if you're like, who do you know that just got married? I'd love to connect with them with services that I offer for newlyweds. They're going to instantly think of who they know that just got married, right? So you're helping people and guiding people so that you can get the correct information and have targeted marketing and communication this year. So that's basically what I have for you guys today. I know I wanted to keep it, relatively simple. I'm so excited because February, if you guys are not already registered, get your ticket, get to Family Reunion February 25th through the 29th. We will not have an industry update next month until after Family Reunion. So it'll be early March because we always get the treat of a full in-depth analysis from Gary Keller and the entire KW research team at Family Reunion. So I know we're going to get all the latest deets for what to expect and how to strategize and plan and what's happened since then. So I'm so excited to be there for that. If you're coming, awesome. If not, I'm going to be bringing back all the details too, and I'll spill the tea with you. So anyways, any questions, comments, anything you guys want to share or that you'd like me to elaborate on? Okay, you guys are awesome. I'll send an email with this recording and the slides so you can use any of this for your consults with your buyers and sellers. I hope this is helpful for you and be empowered because, man, I got to say, it's just such a good time to be in real estate, I feel like, Now, I really want to challenge you lastly on perspective. Remember, you get what you look for. If you decide this is going to be a great year for you, it's going to be a great year. And if you decide that it's going to be a struggle and like, yeah, the year's going to be good, but it's probably going to be pretty hard too, you're going to see that show up too. So I'm not telling you to be blindly optimistic, but I'm telling you, your perspective is powerful. So get excited because there's so much opportunity this year. Interest rates are going down, demand is rising, new builds and new constructions are growing. Like we're in the right place at the right time. All you have to do now is choose to be willing to do the work every day, make the calls, pick up the phone and target, right? Don't just have random conversations, but think about how am I strategically going to find the people? And how can I do that in the first 3 quarters of this year so that as, election chaos ensues in the end of the year, you can just be enjoying your life and letting the good times roll. So I hope that encourages you guys today, and just know that I'm here to be a resource for you for anything you need. So have a great day, and I'll send this recording out later, and thanks for being on.